Hey guys, welcome to week 22, which is actually week 2 of the sociology class. So last week we talked about what is sociology and just some of the very basic fundamentals. This week we are talking about the history of sociology, and I want to just highlight a couple of the key players and a couple of the what we call the big thinkers. All right, so the first one is Auguste Comte. He's often considered the father of sociology, right? Now, he used what they called positivism, and that is a word that you'll need to know for this week, all right? And that's nothing more than positivism is the belief that human behavior can be studied using the scientific method, all right? In other words, you're going to have very empirical data, or you're going to have data to prove, all right? So when we talk about this, we might be talking, and we see this all the time, like poverty rates or suicide rates, or violent offenders. So it's taking those stats and the statistics and being able to come up with general trends with that. All right. So Auguste Comte was really one of the very first people to lay it out and say, you know what, social behavior can be studied using the scientific method. And because of that, he had lots of people that followed that really made sociology the field that it is. And honestly, sociology is only about 120 years old as a science. All right. This was followed up by Harriet Montagu. She's often considered the first female sociologist, and given the time, she was dismissed from academia due to her gender, and she built upon Comte's work. In fact, she translated all of his French writings into English, and she believed that a society was measured by these three standards. Number one, the status of those who hold the least power in society, popular views of authority and autonomy, meaning self-governing, and access to resources that allow the realization of autonomy and moral action. So we could take a look at two societies. One of them might be, let's say, the United States. Okay, so what is the status of those people with the least amount of power? So we think about those people that are on public assistance for generational, people that have always been unemployed, the people that are homeless. The very, what we consider as the socioeconomic, the very bottom rung. Now, how might that change from India or China? So, we certainly see wealth in India, but we also see extreme poverty. So, basically, progress in societies are measured by those three standards. The next is Karl Marx, and Karl Marx was much more than just a sociological thinker. He rejected Comte's positivism. He said no. He believed that all of society is in a constant struggle, which he's kind of the founder of the conflict theory between the rich and the poor. All right, so life is one long battle between those that are being exploited and the people that are exploiting them. All right, in his famous book, The Communist Manifesto, he spoke of the bourgeoisie, who were the owners of production, the wealthy, and the proletariat, who were the masses of the workers. Those were the ones being explored. And he believed that to study sociology, you have to study the conflict between those classes. Next, we talk about Herbert Spencer. He really narrowed the field of sociology and really started talking about religion, family politics, social class, social stratification. And he was a strong proponent of social Darwinism. And we talk about Darwinism in his theory's evolution. Basically, he said that only the strongest survive. And Herbert Spencer believed that to be true when we talk about social Darwinism. So the rich people are rich because of a reason, all right? Typically because they're hard workers, they're better. And those people that don't have those means is for a very specific reason, right? Emile Durkheim, another key proponent, and you're going to be seeing Durkheim come up and up, throughout this. And he wanted to really construct the first scientific approaches to this of all social phenomenon. And his early on, most of his research came around suicide, and he looked at different societies that commit suicide. He saw that traditional societies were held together by the fact that everyone was more or less the same. So he believed that people were pretty much the same and thought that society was the sum of its parts and coined the term social facts. All right? Social facts are nothing more than the things that make up life. So social facts would be the way that we dress, how we approach each other, how we talk, all of those social mores and norms, right? And, Durkheim looked at society, and he was one of the early people to talk about deviance as well. And Durkheim believed that deviance was actually an essential part of society. In other words, society could not exist without crime because it's an essential part. So next we talk about George Herbert Mead, and he gets into what they call symbolic interactionism. And that's basically how we make sense of the world around us by using symbols. We act on a basis of meaning. So, we all learn to act very differently in different situations. And those meanings are very individually interpreted. Max Weber was the next one, and he kind of looked at, and if you look at his age, he was really writing prolifically right around the turn of the century, which was right around the same time that the Industrial Revolution came about. And he really kind of looked at bureaucracy and what he termed as the iron cage. So, and he wrote a lot about the Puritan work ethic. And at one time, the Puritans were known for working very hard. However, when the Industrial Revolution came around, that work ethic kind of disappeared. But what didn't was the bureaucracy. So the mindset that came with that, we were left with the bureaucracy. And he believed in what they call anti-positivism, which is the exact opposite. So it's less about empirical evidence, it's less about hard facts, and it's more about interpretive means, all right? So it's knowing why people do certain things and the way that we ask that. So he cared more about the why. Why do we do the things that why do we do the things that we do, not necessarily what is it, all right? And the last kind of key term that you really need to know for this is what they call Fürchten, all right? And that's understanding human behavior through empathy, through the actor's point of view. So it's taking that actor, whoever it was, through their point of view. So why did they rob the bank? Why did they commit suicide? Why did they do this or that? And kind of taking that point of view, all right? And the last part of this chapter is something that I love, and that's basic research, all right? And there's two kind of fields of research. One of them is called qualitative, and the other one is called quantitative, all right? Now, as you can imagine, qual means quality, right? So a quality or a qualitative research is based on collecting data that's through observations and interviews, sitting down with people and talking to people and finding general themes that come out of that. Whereas quantitative is discovering facts about social phenomenon. And that is measured through, that's conducted by measuring data. And when I talk about data, I'm talking about statistical numbers that might show indicators of something, all right? For example, does watching violent television influence violent behavior in teens? So this is a common question that's been asked for several years, all right? A qualitative method, what they would do is, quantitative, is they would look at the levels of violence on TV. So they would sit down and they would watch TV and they would make a mark for every time there was a violent act, and they would measure that, how whether it was just a slap or a kick or a hit or a punch, or whether it was something more gory and bloody. So they would somehow come up with a way to measure that variable, and then they would measure violence in life. And they would use that statistical analysis to see if there's any correlation between the two. A qualitative research person might sit down with them, and they would talk about, from the kids, from the parents, from the teens' point of view. They might do observations, and they would find general themes that come out of that. And there's also what they call mixed methodology, which is a little bit of both. But it's important to know these two, because qualitative and quantitative are the foundations of research in sociology, and we know what we know because of them, right? So if you just watch this video, this really has the key points to this chapter. So make sure that you know the difference between qualitative and quantitative. Make sure you know what each of these major people did. Particularly, you're going to definitely need to know Auguste Comte. You're definitely going to need to know Karl Marx. you'll definitely need to know Emil Durkheim, George Herbert Mead, and Max Weber. All right. So any questions, please feel free to reach out. Good job so far, and I look forward to seeing what you guys put together.